So hello, welcome back to RS Thinks. Today I'm doing the 1,000 kilometre trek around the UK on the Charger Wasteland with Gary from the EV Musings podcast. I'm at Beaconsfield services at the moment. I've just got the car on for a quick kind of top up before we set off, because I've had to drive obviously from my house to get here, so I want to put as much charge in as I can. Next time you see us, we'll be in the car with Gary, so stay tuned. Join us in the car now. We're on the M4 heading for our first destination from Beaconsfield services. As you saw in the previous one, I was charging. I managed to charge it to 100%, which is great. So we're starting the journey with a full battery to give us maximum range. The car was quoting 253 miles on the GOM, so we'll see how accurate that is when we get to the first place and see what we've got left based on what we've travelled. This is Gary, EV Musings podcast, so we're sharing the trip. I'm covering this for my YouTube channel, he's going to be covering this for his podcast as well.
Hi everybody, as Rob says, I'm Gary, EV Musings. If you don't subscribe, why not? Please do. We talk about various things that are interesting to electric vehicle owners and renewables and things like that. The way I'm going to be covering this from a podcast point of view is going to be slightly different, because obviously it's going to be audio based rather than video based. I'll be talking a little bit, I'm going to put sort of a summary together as well about any issues that we may or may not encounter. Half of me wants to encounter some issues because it makes it a little bit more interesting, and half of me doesn't, but we'll see exactly how that turns out.
Yeah, we don't want this trip to be too easy, so we do have a really sort of rough plan of where we want to go, but we're not just going to be following the map, going from charger to charger or place to place or anything, because it makes it a bit more interesting for you, the viewer, to see it, and it's a bit more realistic as well when you are doing a journey of this nature. So I'll put a link to Gary's podcast in the comments of this video.
Thank you.
And then you can watch it on mine, you can hear what Gary's thoughts are on this too. So do you want to give some information about the routes that we're going to do?
One of the things that a lot of people do when they do long distance journeys is they do a lot of planning, and on the podcast I advocate planning for where you're going, especially if you've got a vehicle that doesn't have a huge range. Like the vehicle I personally drive only has about 100-120 mile range, so I have to do a lot of planning with chargers. But one of the things that we wanted to do was to see what happens if we don't do any planning, we just go straight out with an approximate route for where we want to go, and then sort of make it all up on the fly. One of the things, we're calling this the Charging Wasteland route, because as a general rule of thumb, if you look at the UK and sort of head out pretty much over to the west or pretty much over to the east, there aren't as many quote-unquote reliable chargers as there are in some of the more populous areas, London, Birmingham, Manchester, around there. So that's kind of where we're going to be planning on doing the route. So as Rob says, we've started in Beaconsfield, we're heading out west towards Cardiff, we're then going to cut north, sort of north and west up through Wales to hit Mold in the north, Chester. We're then going to go back east, across the M62, we're going to cut into Huddersfield, where both Rob and I went to university, take a little picture outside the university buildings.
And we're also both from Huddersfield as well, born and bred in Huddersfield, so...
Boys in the hood.
Yeah.
Once we've hit sort of Leeds area, we're going to head further south. We're going to cut through Lincolnshire, Boston area, down maybe the outskirts of Norfolk, before cutting back in towards Cambridge and back around the M25 to Beaconsfield. So all in all, 610 miles, depending on the actual route, with no prior planning for which chargers we're going to take.
So there you go, so that's what to expect from the video, so stay tuned and you can see how we get on. So we're doing our first stop now, we're in Cardiff. We've gone to a Bannatyne's Health Club where we've got intervolt chargers just over here. So Gary's just reversing the car in so we can get charged up a bit. We don't need to charge because we've got 100 miles on the car, but we're in Cardiff and we plan to drive basically the full length of Wales and we're not sure what charger availability and reliability is going to be like there, so we're taking the opportunity now to put some in so we can almost guarantee we're going to be able to get through Wales. We're going to be here for about half an hour. We want to put in about maybe 24 kilowatts, 25 kilowatts in, which should enable us to get through Wales. So as I said, our next stop from here is somewhere in North Wales. We're going to have a look on a map and just find a place maybe, and then investigate charging around that area when we're almost there. So join us again soon. So you join us on the way to Chirk. We're going to stop at an Instavolt charging station there. Not because we need to. We've got 69 miles in the battery at the moment, and it's enough to get us to Chester, where we want to go to next. But as you do, we need a comfort break, and we may get some food as well. So
yeah, that's one of the disadvantages of being a gentleman of my age, particularly.
Yeah, I'm okay. I don't need the loo. I'm just hungry.
I've been sat here with my legs crossed for the last 45 minutes, so we're going to take advantage of the McDonald's there and put in a few electrons while we're at it, and we'll see what happens.
Yep. So we just go round the roundabout, and then we're going to get to the charger. So we stopped again. This stop is just north of Oswald Street at a place called Chirk. Again, we're on a Instavolt charger again. We've been getting 50 kilowatts consistently. We're going to charge to 80%, and then we're going to be heading off through Chester, Manchester, through Huddersfield, our hometown, and then our next stop will be somewhere in Lincolnshire. Not sure where yet. We're just going to see what's available. So next time you see us, we should be in Lincolnshire. Where we are. When we last spoke, we were at Chirk in Wales still. So since then we've come through Chester, Manchester, along the M62. We actually came off at Huddersfield. We went past our old university, stopped and took a picture.
Boys in the hood!
Pictures on Twitter. We then drove to the M1 from there. We've just come off the M1. We're now on the A1 heading towards Grantham, so we're going into Lincolnshire. We've been looking on ZapMap to try and find somewhere to stop. We've actually got 67 miles at the moment, and we reckon when we stop at the services in Grantham, which is a grid serve, we should have about 20 miles left. So that's where we're going to head for now, and then once in Grantham we're going to see if we can head a little bit further east, just to see if there's something over there we can go to. But as the name of this video is, it's the charging wasteland. There aren't that many rapids in Lincolnshire to choose from, are there, really? So,
well, there aren't. Ideally, what we wanted to do was to stay as far east as possible and cut down outside Lincoln and down Boston and places like that. But given the way we charge at the moment, we don't actually have confidence that we can find anything other than like a 7 kilowatt charger to top us up and get us moving forward. So we elected to say at this point we're going to try and find the fastest charger we can in the area, which happens to be Grantham, which is where we're going. Grid serve should be a 150 kilowatt one, 120 kilowatts, whatever. Plenty fast enough for this vehicle. And then once we leave that, we are going to try and loop around a little bit further out to the east, maybe touch the edge of Norfolk if possible, depending on the route, and then back down around Cambridge. And by that point, we'll be looking at working out exactly what our next charging point is going to be, and whether we can actually make it all the way back to Beaconsfield on what we've got, or whether we need to do another charge there. But that's the whole beauty of this. There's nothing being planned in advance. We're just sort of playing it by ear.
And just done 400 miles, so we've only got another 200 to go. So we're not making bad time. We've been driving, well, we've been in the car, whether we've been driving or not. Obviously, we've been parked up for 8 hours and 40 minutes at the moment, and our current miles per kilowatt is actually quite good. It's 4.1, which is not bad. Not bad going. Since our last charge, we've done 134 miles, and we're at 4.2 miles per kilowatt. So anything over 4 is good. So we're on track for maybe doing just a couple more charges possibly. So we'll see how it goes.
So we're 6 miles away from Grantham, and we are down to 8% on the GOM, at 20 miles left. So I'm having a tiny weeny bit of charger anxiety, but Rob says no, it'll all be fine. So we should be okay. I don't really have a worry about getting there. We've just checked the status on the charges that are there, and we're getting conflicting reports. The CHAdeMO apparently is being used now, although 40 minutes ago there was an error with it, and someone's literally just finished the CCS charging, although one of the chargers that is all CCS appears to be out of service. So we'll see what happens when we get there.
And what Gary said about the battery being quite low is actually quite good for charging, so we should see 100 kilowatts on this charger, I believe. So we can hopefully spend less time there, which means if we do have to wait, it's not so bad. If this was a 50 kilowatt charger, obviously the waiting while we're charging would be more, but because it's 100 kilowatts, we should be good. So let's see what happens when we get there.
Bring you up to date with what has happened. We were going to go originally down to Grantham, but on the way down we passed Blythe services. We thought, there's a grid serve here, let's pop in and have a look. And we got in. There is the one grid serve at Blythe. Unfortunately, there were 2 cars on there. One of them was a Nissan and the other one was a Corsa. Now Rob looked at it and went,
yeah, I thought initially that doesn't look like an electric car to me, and it was a young guy in it with a young family, and I stereotyped him, which I shouldn't have done, that was wrong, but I went over just to have a look and just to see, and I was going to ask him to move if he was, but I was surprised that it was actually the Corsa E, and he was plugged in, but unfortunately the charger wasn't working because the leaf part next to it was obviously charging. The guy from the Corsa said that he was very, very low and needed to charge. So we thought, there's no point hanging around here because you've got to wait for the Leaf to finish. Then we've got to wait for the Corsa to finish. And Grantham was only a little way down the road. So we decided to move on. So we've arrived at Grantham now, and ZapMap was telling us that this was a 120 kilowatt charger. But since we've plugged in, we're only getting a maximum of about 45 kilowatts from this. So even though this is one of the new units, it doesn't look like it's got the full charging capacity yet.
That is very disappointing because we arrived with 5% and a nice warm battery, so that should have been the ideal conditions for jumping up the charge curve and giving us, I don't know, at least 80 kilowatts, maybe even 100 up around there. So a little bit disappointing on that, especially when you consider that not 50 yards over the other side of the car park there are, a dozen Tesla superchargers, 6 of which happen to be occupied when we arrived, so there's no shortage of power to the actual site. Now, how much of it is actually making it to the one grid serve charger that's actually working is anyone's guess, but definitely a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, so as Gary said, there are 2 units here. One of them just has no power whatsoever, and the other one is the one we're using that's got CCS and CHAdeMO. So if you're a Leaf driver wanting to come down here, then you can still use it, but the other charger, which is double CCS, is just not working at the moment. You join us again at Beaconsfield services, where we started this morning just over 13 hours ago. We've done the journey. We've done 1,000 kilometres of 600 miles. We've actually done 604 miles, so a little bit over. And we managed to do it with just 3 stops, which I'm very pleased about. I thought we could have gone into 4, but we've done 3 stops. When we got here, we had 27 miles left on the car, so we are just charging now just so that I can get home from here. But yeah, that's a pretty good result, I think.
Absolutely. Now let me ask you a quick question. What was your favourite part?
Favourite part was driving through Wales.
I was just going to say exactly the same. And why was that?
Because the roads were just so smooth, and you really noticed how quiet the car was. Driving on the roads in England, say, potholes, quite rough surfaces, there's quite a lot of road noise. Driving through Wales, it was just like billiard table smooth roads, which really kind of emphasised how quiet the car is.
And not to mention some spectacular views.
Yeah, some really good ones. I hope you've enjoyed the 360 footage that I've managed to slot in here. There's an epic sunset that we got on the motorway, so yeah, hope you enjoyed those shots.
So let's talk about the charging itself. The whole idea behind this is we're trying the charging wastelands because there's obviously an infrastructure issue. So have we borne that out in the charging that we found?
I think we have, yeah. We didn't find any chargers that were over 50 kilowatts, and at certain points we did have to resort to kind of having a plan B just in case plan A didn't work out.
Just to cut in there, I don't think it's fair to say we didn't find any over 50 kilowatts. When we were in certain parts of the country, such as the stretch heading up through the middle of Wales, all the chargers that we found were only 50 kilowatts, which it's absolutely fine. There's no problem with a 50 kilowatt charger, but when you've got a car such as this that can charge at 100, 120 kilowatts, if you're limited to 50, that could be a bit of an issue. So regardless of how many chargers there were or there weren't, and it is a bit of a wasteland, but it is improving. There was a brand new one, Tesco Pod Point, that opened up in Newtown. We found the one at Chirk, which was a relatively new McDonald's two-headed one, just north of Oswestry. So they are there, but the amount of power that's available for a car such as this is rather limited. So that did cause us a little bit of delay. And then, of course, as we said, we've had the issue at Grantham where whilst the charger that we were going for should have been able to give us 60, 70, maybe 80 kilowatts, it didn't give us anywhere near that. Now, in hindsight, would we have done anything different?
I think maybe a little bit more planning, but then that would have kind of gone away from the spontaneity of the whole trip. But yeah, I don't know. Would you?
Well, possibly. As you may have picked up if you've been following what we've done and with the commentary, we took a decision when we got to Cardiff, even though we had 40% state of charge, to charge in the Cardiff area and then head north. Now, knowing what we know now, including the fact that we can run this, I mean, we ran this down to what, 5? Well, we ran it even lower, didn't we? 5%. Yeah, 5%. We could quite easily have gone a lot further north in Wales. We could have gone up through Brecon. We could have gone to Llandrindod-Wells, maybe even up to Newtown on the charge that we had originally from Beaconsfield. That would have meant we had to spend a lot longer charging in the centre of Wales, but it would have given us more options going around the top and around through Huddersfield and along the M62. So we could then have gone a lot further out east and hit some of those areas down there before having to come back into Grantham. So yeah, I think in hindsight, we may have gone back, charged at a slightly different point, but I think what we did was perfectly acceptable. I think it proved that if you have a vehicle with a moderate range, 200 miles plus, I mean, we got what, 230, 250 on this when we left. That is sufficient to do the whole 1,000 kilometres with 3 charges, even going around somewhere such as Wales, where it may, and the east of the UK, which maybe doesn't have as many charges as, the southeast, the M6, even places such as the Midlands. So it can be done, most definitely.
Yeah, so that's it. We've finished. So if you've got it this far, thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe.
Hit the little notification bell, apparently. That's the next thing.
And also remember the link to Gary's podcast in the comments.
EV Musings.
We'd very much like to get some more listeners.
Yeah, just a couple more. That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Bye.